Series 10, Episode 4 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Nikki Smith, and my lovely co-host today is Lauren North. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Now, in our last episode, Trevor Wood shared his insights into being a published author 3 years on from his debut, and he gave some great advice, so do check that episode out. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking to thriller author Alex North about his latest novel, The Half-Burnt House, as well as our topic for today, which is the importance of festivals. But before we go on, I need to ask my co-host if she's still alive, because she managed to run a full marathon at the weekend, which is just quite amazing, as all I did was seem to eat and drink a lot of wine. So I'd like to say huge congratulations to her. And how are you feeling today, Lauren?
Thank you, Nikki. I wish I had stayed in and drunk lots of wine and eaten food, if I'm honest. It was awful. The first 21 miles were great. The last 5 were awful. And I would highly recommend nobody does it. So that's the stage I'm at in my recovery, which apparently is normal. So yeah, stairs today are not my friend, I would say. And there's lots of groaning. I think it must be what it's like to be sort of 99 years old and everything hurts. But yes, I'm doing okay, thank you. And I'm enjoying writing my new thriller. So that's going well. I'm hoping to hit 30,000 words this week on that.
Amazing.
And that's it. Whereabouts are you with your writing? You're in the first draft stage as well, aren't you? We're sort of in tune.
We are indeed, except I'm a lot slower than you, Lauren, and so you will have finished and be on to the next one before I'm probably halfway with mine. But
I'm not sure.
But yeah, I'm also drafting away a first draft, and yes, it's the usual. Some days it feels like wading through treacle and pulling teeth, and other days it goes a lot better. So yeah. Just kind of see how it goes.
The first draft, though, isn't it? That is every
day. Exactly. And I don't know what it's like with you, but we've got half term here as well in our house for a couple of weeks, which makes things just a bit change of routine and a bit up and down, and everyone demanding your attention a bit more. So yes, makes it a bit more difficult to concentrate.
Yes, I've got this week as no half term and then 2 weeks off after that. So yes, you're slightly out of sync with me on that one, but yes, I'm trying to get stuff done. I've not been able to work at all today. Like I can't even string a sentence together mostly. So
I'm not surprised. I mean, you're looking amazingly well.
It's just the filter. So
honestly, if I'd run a marathon, you wouldn't even see me in a video. I would just be lying on the floor quietly dying somewhere. So went so well.
Anyway, let's talk about our topic, which is the importance of festivals. So how about we have a chat about festivals, because we met at the Harrogate Crime Writing Festival, didn't we, Nikki, in 2019, I want to say. Is that right?
We did indeed, yes.
And they were so good. And now we are like in a little writers posse with 2 others, and we talk every day, and it's amazing. And so for me, the importance of festivals is finding your people and gathering them and making them your team. And I just love going to festivals now and seeing, once you've been to a few, it's the same people, isn't it? And you just feel so at home among them, I think. So that's why I like to go. What about you?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember I was terrified when I went in 2019, when I went to Harrogate. It was my debut was coming out in 2020, and I didn't know anyone. And I think I'd chatted a little bit to Laura Pearson online, because she was involved with a book club, online book club. Basically kind of was put in contact, I think, with you as well. And it was a case of kind of like, please adopt me for the weekend.
I was like that with
I just want somebody to go to breakfast with, and I want somebody so that when I walk into the tent, I'm not standing on my own looking like an idiot. I think we found each other, didn't we, in the Callaghan Hotel on the first day, and then that just meant that for the rest of the festival, it just felt so nice that you had people to kind of come back to when you were feeling a little bit lonely or you didn't know where you were going and all of that kind of thing. So yes, I think we got on really, really well, and yes, it's been a regular date in the diary every year since, apart from COVID, obviously. So I think it's an amazing way to meet other authors and also readers.
I was just going to say that as well, because that's the other thing, isn't it? It's attending festivals and then being part of festivals, which I'm trying to do a little bit more of next year if I can. So I'm going to do the Skullduggery Festival in Stowmarket this year. I'm on a panel there.
That's exciting.
And
I'm trying one in Alperton, I think, and it's a really good way to meet readers as well as other authors, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can't remember who said it. Oh gosh, it was Trevor last week, wasn't it? He made the point that it doesn't matter if you go to these things and there's only 10 people in the room and you're talking to them, and it doesn't matter if you only sell one book or no books, because those people will remember you and they will go away and they will think about your books, and the next time they might buy it, or they might buy it at a later point. But just meeting readers puts you in their mind so much better than any other way, I think. So that's certainly worth
and I think and also you're, as well as hopefully having something interesting to talk to readers about, you're also the best advocate of your book. And I think that if you can explain it in a way that people want to listen and hear more about it and find out more about you, then then I think that attracts other readers to the book. So
yeah, that is true. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because you have to be so succinct with what the book's about and make it sound interesting and make it not sound like you've said the same 3 sentences 50 times in the last few months and remember those sentences with all the nerves of sitting up on a table with looking out into this room of people. So it's not necessarily always the easiest thing to sell your book. I always feel like I start really well and then start rambling a bit, and then I go, and that's it.
Yes, I think there's definitely that kind of element of stage fright. I remember doing a kind of a panel, just an incident panel at Harrogate, not one of the main panels, and I do remember feeling utterly terrified, staring out at a kind of room of faces. But once you've settled into it, I think it becomes easier as well. So
yeah.
So how about we get Alex North on to talk about his role in the Theakston Old Peculiar Crime Writing Festival, which runs in Harrogate in July.
Let's do that. Welcome, Alex. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to In Suspense.
Oh, wow. I mean, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, we're very lucky. Before we dive into our questions, could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Okay, so just briefly, my name is Alex North. I am 47. I live in Leeds with my wife and son, and I've written 3 books: The Whistle Man, The Shadow Friend, and The Half-Burnt House. It's my most recent one. And before that, I wrote 10 books under a different name, under my own name, Steve Mosby. So I was first published in 2003, but now these days I write exclusively as Alex North.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So your latest book, The Half-Burnt House, or The Angel Maker as it's titled in the US, is a real
weird.
Yeah, I've had that with a book, and I get, even now 5 years on, I get readers being like, I've bought this book twice. I'm like, oh, sorry.
I know, and that's the absolute, sorry to interrupt your question, but that is the absolute nightmare, nightmare scenario. And for me, it's weird because I always, even if I have a favorite author, I look at what the book's about before I buy it. So if I read it, then I would recognize it. But you absolutely do not want them, the readers to feel aggrieved. So I've tried to always be really clear about that as much as possible. But yeah.
It's out of your hands, though, isn't it, Alex? So
to an extent, yeah. Hopefully not.
But it's a real heart in your mouth thriller that I raced through. So I wonder if you could tell us what the book's about, please.
Okay, so The Half-Burnt House is the story of a woman called Katie Shaw. When she's a teenager, her parents expected her to look after her little brother all the time, kind of thing, which she resented a great deal. And then one day she didn't do that. She pursued a kind of selfish aim to an extent, and something terrible happened to him. And she's had to live with the consequences of that ever since. Now they've grown older. Her little brother Chris, has had problems with addiction and homelessness, and they're kind of estranged. And at the beginning of the book, she gets a call from her mother to say that Chris has come back, but he's in trouble, and she has to make a decision about whether she is going to kind of pursue that and kind of try to reconcile with him in some way. But at the same time, a distinguished professor of philosophy who specializes in free will and determinism has been found brutally murdered. And when the police check the CCTV footage in his flat, they find evidence that Chris was there and that perhaps he stole something from the professor and is involved in the murder in some way. And at that point, Katie and Chris and the people hunting them and the police all kind of are involved in this kind of pursuit to discover the truth about what's happening.
Yes. So, as Lauren said, it is a very gripping thriller.
Thank you.
And I thought that Katie's guilt for her mistake was really identifiable with, actually, and very heartbreaking, and really kind of leapt off the page. And I read about you that The Whisper Man, which is one of your other books, was inspired by something that your son said about talking to the boy in the floor, which sent shivers down me. I love that book as well, actually. But can you tell us a bit about where the idea for this particular book came from? Did it start with the kind of creepy half-burnt house, or did it start with Katie or Chris? Or
I mean, it started. Going back to The Whisper Man, Whisper Man is very much about a father and son. And like you say, it was, I wanted to write about fathers and sons at that point, and it was informed by what my son's, we'd moved into a new house, really a few days there, and he was just playing by himself. And he was only about 4 or 5 at that point. He was playing by himself in the front room, as you do, and talking. And I was in the kitchen, and I went through and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm just playing with the boy on the floor, which is kind of not what you want when you've just moved into a new house, But thankfully, that was the end of it. And, you stand there kind of shivering and think, oh, that's a bit creepy. But then, like, the writer part of your brain thinks, that's actually pretty cool. I'm going to use that. With the half-burnt house, because I tend to write about relationships quite a lot in my work. I wanted to write, I'd done father and son in The Whisper Man, and I'd done kind of mother and son to an extent in The Shadow Friend, and I wanted to write about siblings, which is a kind of different kind of relationship. There is that there's that love and affection and that kind of but there's also not quite the same sense of responsibility and duty, and I thought that would be interesting to explore. But I suppose the initial idea behind it, apart from that, was I've always been interested in stories and films that contain works of fiction, and there's kind of a motif almost that you will find of this legendary text. Perhaps it will be a film that was only shown once, and then everybody went mad, kind of watching it, and then the theatre burnt down, and perhaps 1 copy or 2 copies survive, and everything like that, and legendary books and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of do my own riff on that, and I think. Now, I was looking back, I kind of wrote an article thinking about this, and I remember when I was a kid, I read this story called Von Goom's Gambit. I can't actually remember off the top of my head who wrote it, but it was about this chess player, and he discovered a gambit that killed people when he played it. But the story was presented in this way that it was almost real. It was like, you won't find the gambit in this book, you won't find the gambit in that book, you'll find it referenced in this book, but there's no page number on it, kind of thing. And I just love that idea of kind of mythical texts and things like that, and things that people want to collect. In the real world, people collect all kinds of very obscure editions of things. There's a thing called the Wicked Bible, which was I think it was editions were published in 1630s or something like that. I think there were like 400 copies printed. Accidentally said, "Thou shalt commit adultery," as the 10 Commandments. So the Wicked Bible, and so loads of them were destroyed. Obviously, at the time, and the people that made it were fined. But there are still some copies available today, and they occasionally change hands. So I'm interested in this idea of collectors looking for these kind of things. And so I wanted in the book to create an object like that, a work of art of some kind that people were driven to search for, and which contains something really, really dark that could affect things. And then at that point, it was like, what is that book going to be? So the Half-Burnt House is sort of about this hunt for this book that's been stolen, and it's the diary, sort of the notebook of a notorious serial killer from 50, 60 years previously, who was supposed to be able to see the future. And it ties into that idea of determinism and free will and everything. I was trying to think, what is the scariest thing that I can put in a book? And I suppose that's what I put into it, is this idea that, you know, there's no such thing as free will, and we're all following, you know, the paths that are set out to us, and how that might affect us, and how that might, you know, how we might break from that in some way, and the implications of that. So that was, you know, I wanted to do that kind of thing. That was the initial starting point.
That's so interesting when you hear so much depth about the idea, when you're reading it and you're just heart in your mouth and racing through the pages, and then to hear all that depth, it's so interesting. Thank you.
No, God, no. I mean, you know, it's quite a complicated book as well, so I'm sure that a lot of that does not come out, you know. So I'm glad that you call it kind of like heart racing and all that, because I think, you know, it's the kind of book that you have to go with a little bit, and hopefully it all makes sense by the end. But you know, yeah, I mean, it's quite complicated to begin with, but hopefully I'll land it. You know?
You do, don't worry.
I always worry.
And you've just touched on this a bit, but your writing often delves into the psychology of characters. So how did you approach the psychology aspects in this novel and the mindsets of your characters?
I think I don't want to say I don't think about it too deeply, because I do, but at the same time, I think I like to leave it a little bit kind of natural while I'm writing it, but I think it's good to have one central psychological motivation that you can ascribe to your character, so you know that will always be the guiding principle, and then you can build other stuff around that. So with Katie, it's, you know, she has this guilt over what she didn't do when she was younger, and I suppose, you know, in kind of classical storytelling way, that's her problem that needs to be resolved by the end of the novel, kind of thing. But that is the main psychological motivation, and that always was in the back of my head when I was writing it. And then you kind of just build the character up around that. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't think about it too much, you know. It's just kind of you have the character in mind, and you kind of let them do what they're going to do and what feels right. And obviously they're slaves to the plot as well. So yeah, well, hopefully, I mean, it's a mixture of the two. Obviously, you have the characters that you want to tell their story, but you also have the story you want to tell. And so you have to kind of like meld the two together slightly. So, you know, I'd have characters in the books who I needed to do, when I need them to do certain things, that's going to entail changing their psychology slightly to make them fit that, you know, and hopefully having it all coalesce in a way. So it's a very organic thing, I think. I go through so many drafts.
Do you?
So, yeah, I mean, I go through, I mean, not like total changes, but, you know, 10, 20 drafts, you know, going through stuff over and over again. It's like a gradually developing Polaroid, you know, that I'm gradually shaking, you know, to make it become clearer and clearer and clearer with each draft.
So are you a pantser writer then, would you describe yourself as?
To an extent. This is interesting because I was at a festival at Chiltern Kills like a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this on stage. Loads of people were talking about this on stage. And I am a planner to an extent in that I have a spreadsheet, a very elaborate Excel spreadsheet.
Welcome, planner. You're fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, but you will be surprised. There are some people who do have spreadsheets and who swear by them, and some who are like, "Oh my God, you have a spreadsheet? That's the worst thing in the world. I can't imagine." I have a very elaborate spreadsheet with color-coded cells in terms of scenes and word count and percentage and themes going down, and I build it up as I go. And I try and have it in place to an extent before I start, but I will build it up as I go, and then I will get to the end and it will be like, this is a total mess and I need to change the brand. So it's a mixture of planning and pantsing, but I think that's what we all do, you know. I mean, if you plan a lot to begin with, then you're going to be changing your plan. And if you write a lot without planning, you're going to be changing your writing. And I think we all do basically the same things, but just in different orders.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's so true. And it was really interesting hearing what you say about characters as well, and the fact that, you know, being slaves to the plot and having to change their psychology, because I find that a lot, even though I plan and I have a spreadsheet like you and color coding and everything else, and you suddenly find that they need to do something, you know, kind of a quarter of the way in, and you're just thinking, well, that's not them. They wouldn't do that at all. So it's trying to work out, well, do you change the plot? Do you change the character? Yeah, it's very...
all that kind of thing. but people can be really unpredictable, you know. So I mean, the same character can do weird things, you know, and you can make it fit if you shift stuff around.
Yeah,
that's so true.
Yes, indeed. So I remember how creepy the Whisper Man and the Shadow Friend were as books, and it feels like with everything you write, you're a bit of the kind of king of atmospheric and sinister reads. So I would like to know a bit more about your writing journey. How did you first get published, and have you always written thrillers?
Oh, okay, right. So, yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a writer from when I was a little kid. The only thing I can ever remember wanting to be, to the point that when I was 11 at school, just gone to secondary school, we did a maths exam and I didn't do very well in it. And I remember thinking, it's fine because you're going to be a writer. That's what you're going to be. You know, and even younger than that, when I was 6 or 7, my mum would get sheets of A4 and fold them in half and sew the edges and get me to write stories. You know, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I did it through my teens. And I think I wrote my first book when I was 17, which was this awful 180,000 word kind of fantasy novel that I didn't even edit.
Oh my God.
But I submitted it. And obviously got rejected many times. And then I wrote like 6 or 7 other books over the next few years that all got rejected as well. And then finally when I was 26, I think my 7th or 8th book I got an agent for, and then it sold to Orion as Steve Mosby. The third person the book was called. And that came out when I was like 26, I think, or
Wow,
27.
still so young.
I know. I look back on it with, it feels weird. It's coming up to like the 20th anniversary of being published for the first time
Oh
for me.
my gosh, that's
So
amazing.
that's really, I know, and it actually does feel like a long time ago, because I look at that book now and I hate it. I hate it so much. So the third person of the cutting crew were the first 2 books I did as Steve Mosby. They were published, and they were kind of a mixture of science fiction and horror and crime.
Wow.
And all kinds of things. And I was part of a promotion when Orion took me on. It was for 9 debut authors, 9 debut crime authors. And because it had a bit of crime in it, I went into that. Yeah. And so at that point, you're a crime writer, you know?
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I kind of lost the science fiction and fantasy elements. I still have a little bit of the horror.
I was
and I
going to
suppose
say,
a little
there
bit of
still
fantasy
comes
too.
through a bit, actually. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I still have I'm not a very realistic crime writer. I'm quite happy to bring some of that stuff in. But I think my third book, The 50-50 Killer, as Steve Mosby, was a much more straightforward crime novel, albeit with a horror element. And since then, I've just been a crime writer since then. Crime is such a broad church, you know, out of all, I mean, there's a lot of leakage between the different genres, you know. I mean, the boundaries are porous. But I think with crime, you can do almost anything you want. You know, you have writers like John Connolly who are writing supernatural thrillers almost, and they are published as crime. And then you have extremely hard-boiled stuff that's published as crime, very gritty and down to earth and everything like that. Pretty much anything you want to do, as long as you stick a body in it somewhere, you know, or, you know, something like that, you can do within the crime genre. It's hugely malleable. I love it. So I've always been happy since then to be considered a crime author, as long as I can still bring some of the other stuff in as well.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually. When it comes to kind of creating atmosphere in your books, is there any particular way that you get into the kind of mood, so to speak, to write those scenes? Do you write at night, or do you listen to music? How do you do it?
No, I'm not a method writer at all. I find it really I'm actually really sort of practical and down to earth about it. It's very much, I mean, I listen to music perhaps to get myself, to give myself a reward almost. You know, I will do a bit of work and then listen to some music just to take a break or do whatever. But I suppose I can listen to purely instrumental stuff when I'm writing, but nothing with lyrics, because it just interferes with the words on the page. But I focus very, very carefully, and I'm very committed to just working on the sentences at that time. So I'm not, it's not romantic, but it's a very mechanical process for me ultimately. And it's like, I'm thinking about word choice. I'm thinking about, how to sort of pace the paragraphs out and do all that kind of stuff. It doesn't scare me at all to write it. I don't really get scared by by reading other people's writing or watching films or anything like that. It's very, very mechanical and methodical. I'm thinking very carefully about what I want to do on the page. And so you're kind of aware of the process. What you're trying to write is hopefully a little bit spooky and a little bit creepy. But it's a purely kind of, it's a mechanical exercise in a way doing that.
Extra question. Do you have a word count per day?
No, I can't. Well, no, what I have, and it's not quite like this. I heard somebody else describe it, but it kind of fits me. It's almost like a dial on your forehead where you're happy or sad about the progress of the book. And so you kind of, even if you write 100 words a day or something like that, it's going well. You might feel happy. Whereas even if you could write 5,000 words a day and the book still feels a little bit flat and a little bit dead. It's not the word count. It's about the kind of progress to feel that you are getting somewhere towards it. You can delete stuff and then feel really happy at the end of the day. So no, not. I mean, I saw Lauren.
Sorry,
Lauren
I just
kind
made
of
a
swallow.
face. I know. I don't delete things because I don't like to see my word count dip. So I just move it into another folder. And then
No. When I say delete it, I don't mean delete it. I mean cut it. So I literally have a word file called cuttings when I'm working on the book, and I keep the prose that I cut out, and because and then you can say, I've not. That was a really nice paragraph. Maybe I can use that later.
You never go back to it though, do you? Really? I don't think I've ever go back to anything I've cut.
No, I mean certainly not for future books. No, I mean it's not like I've got like a treasure trove of glorious prose or anything like that I would go back to. But in terms of when I'm working on a particular book, it's kind of useful to look through and go, I'll cut that bit out. But there's something in there that actually it would be quite useful to use somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you don't need it, you don't need it. But it's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Very true, yes. So our topic for today, Alex, is all about writing festivals and why they are important. So you're a familiar face at many festivals in the UK throughout the year. So firstly, why do you think festivals are so important for writers?
Well, with the caveat they're not necessarily important for writers. It depends on how you approach them. They're absolutely important for me. The importance on a personal level, I suppose, is that I'm a full-time writer and have been for quite some time. So it's a chance for me to go and meet with my peers, my colleagues, my friends, and to catch up with people who I've known for a long time, and to meet new people and make friends and everything like that. It's a very lonely business, writing, a very solitary business. And it's just good to have that kind of sense of connection. And I also think it's just, I think it's lovely to see loads of festivals. And over the last few years, there have been quite a few springing up and everything. And I think that speaks well to the subconscious of the country almost, of society, that you have these literary events. In terms of the importance of the writers, I don't know if you make very much money from going to them necessarily. I don't know if it particularly advances your career always in many ways. Maybe you can have that debate and that discussion, but I think they are extremely valuable for me because I just absolutely love going to events that are about celebrating the arts, and especially an art form like the crime genre that I really love. But book festivals in general, I mean, it's a sign of a healthy society that you have an artistic scene where there are people coming together to celebrate that. I love it.
I think that there's more crime festivals probably than any other genre actually as well, which is interesting. I don't know.
It could possibly be true. I think.
Yeah. I don't necessarily know why that is. I mean, obviously, it's a very popular genre for people to write in, but so is romance, and I don't think that that necessarily has half as many festivals as crime. But you're quite involved with Theakston's Old Peculiar Crime Writing Festival, the one in Harrogate, which is probably Lauren and my favourite festival, I would say, because we met back there for the first time in 2019, and we'd already booked our house for the following year, the day that we left on the train home. I mean, obviously, COVID put pay to that slightly.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
I know. Yeah, I'm sure. But we absolutely love it, and I think it's got a really good balance of readers and authors in attendance. So, can you tell us a bit about how you came to be involved in it and what your role is?
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I've been going since I can't remember the first year I went. I think 2007, maybe. Not the first year or two or whatever, but I think about the time that my third book came out, Steve Mosby, I started attending. And the first, it was at the Old Swan, I think, the first one. And you walk up the drive, and it was so intimidating. And I was quite young at that point, obviously, still, rather than this kind of grizzled old timer now. But it's like I felt I didn't know anybody, and I thought, what am I doing? This is gonna be awful. But made loads and loads of friends, and the atmosphere was lovely, and I came away just which is another thing you take from going to festivals. You come away with a buzz. You feel really creatively inspired. By being surrounded by people who are really into what they're doing, and you build each other up. So I came away loving it, and I've been back every single year since. And I was asked to chair it in 2014, which was kind of amazing. It was in 2012 I was asked after the award ceremony, because I've been shortlisted and I lost, which is fine, and all that kind of thing. But Mark Billingham and Val McDermott came up and kind of like dragged me to one side and said, would you be interested in chairing the festival? And I think I said, I don't know, I need to think about it, actually, at that point. I think they were quite taken aback, because I think most people say yes, but I was like, am I good enough to do that? Am I up to the job of doing it, kind of thing? So I thought about it, and then I said the next morning, I think, yes, absolutely, I would love to do this. And chairing it was absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best experiences of my writing life. And then you chair it for 1 year. Harrogate they do male, female writers, and there's a chair, but there's also a programming committee. And then a couple of years after that, after I chaired it, they just asked me if I wanted to join the programming committee, kind of full time. So it was like, yes, absolutely, I love this, And so I've been doing that ever since, for the last sort of 5-6 years. And it's basically, you have the chair who puts their flavor into the festival, chooses programming topics and everything like that, chooses special guests, and you have the programming committee who just kind of support them, kind of helping to build stuff up and everything behind the scenes. So yeah, I mean, it's an absolute joy to do it. I love it. And I mean, you mentioned that you guys met there. Would you say 2019?
Yeah.
So that's another benefit of festivals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like you may go there, and you may not sell many books necessarily, or you may not make a huge splash, but there's all these little serendipitous things that happen when you're networking with your colleagues and your peers and meeting people. If you guys hadn't met, you wouldn't be doing this.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is,
we talk, we have a kind of group, and with another couple of ladies that we met there as well, and we talk pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Completely, I can't remember like not knowing you, but having.
No,
whereas it has only been since 2019. It's really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't imagine being an author now and not having Nikki, Zoe, and Laura in my team and being part of who I am. And that's crazy. We talk about everything. We don't just talk about writing, do we? And just to think that we just met at this festival, and it's just become so important to us. So it's such a lovely place to meet your people and make friends. And I love going into the tent now and knowing so many people, because every year on year you just know so many more people.
You can put a financial value on festivals. You can look at them as, is it worth my while to go, kind of thing? Am I going to sell enough books? Am I going to raise my profile in some way? But you can't put a cost on things like that. You meet people, and who knows what will happen. It can change your life, but not in a kind of like astronomical way, but in a really good way. You make these connections, and they improve everything.
But even just having a conversation with an author in the tent, knowing, or even just but just having a great connection with someone, and then 6 months down the line, when you're saying, your publisher's sort of saying, well, who might read your new book, you can then talk. You've actually met these people, and it's hard to approach people and say, would you mind reading my new book? But if you've already got that connection with them, then it just makes it that much easier. So from a networking perspective, perspective as well. It's really important.
Absolutely.
Which makes me sound a bit cold and calculating, but I didn't mean it like that.
No, but everybody is aware of that side of things.
Yeah.
I get emails from people all the time going, "Oh God, it's time for me to do this terrible thing where I have to ask if you read my book," and I go, "Yeah, I'll try."
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can't
I'll try.
Yeah,
Exactly. But once you've got that connection, it's a lot easier. You're all in the same boat, and you know it.
Exactly. So I know you've chaired panels, including the one that I was on at Crime Fest in Bristol in May, and you've also been on panels too. So I wondered which you prefer, and what advice would you give to an author who would like to put themselves out there more and get involved in festivals?
Okay, so I tend to. I moderated the panel with you at Crime Fest. I do tend to moderate at Crime Fest almost every year. I will be on one and I will moderate one. And I've moderated ones elsewhere too. Moderation or chairing or whatever is very stressful, very, very stressful. I kind of prefer it in one way because I don't really like talking about myself very much. I find it really, I don't like being the center of attention. So you can put yourself to one side and focus on these 4-5 brilliant people you have, as was the case, obviously, on our panel. But you are kind of the ringmaster, and if anything goes wrong, people are going to be looking at you rather than the authors, and so you need to be very, very well prepared, I think, and very relaxed about it, and just there's a skill set that you need to do that well, I think, and it can go terribly wrong, and when it goes wrong, it's the worst feeling in the world. Being on a panel, I suppose, is easier, but as I said, I don't really like talking about myself very much, and I feel very sort of self-conscious when I'm doing it. It's kind of like, this person next to me is probably far more interesting than me. You should ask them that question. Let's hear more from them. There's pluses and minuses to both of them. I guess maybe I prefer, it's much more relaxing to be on one than to moderate. But when moderation goes well, that's a better feeling, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of how you could go about kind of as a newer author getting on them, it's quite difficult because a lot of the major festivals in the UK are curated in terms of who's going to be on the panels. Crime Fest, if you're a crime writer, the absolute positive thing you can say about it is that if you book early, you will be on a panel, and it's a really, really good place, I think, to start out just doing stuff. You can get on a panel there if you book early enough. Things like Harrogate, I don't know how the other festivals operate, but like Bloody Scotland, Capital Crime, some of the other bigger stuff, they're more curated. So it's not saying that they're closed off to you exactly, but it's not like you can choose to be on a panel there.
No.
You need to kind of put yourself forward a bit, get yourself known, get yourself in front of the people who are programming it.
But also to be the right topic as well, because you're quite specific
absolutely.
on your panel topic. So it doesn't matter if you're Erin Kelly or Val McDermott, if they're talking about a very specific subject, they're not going to be right for the panel either.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And I don't want to go too much into kind of the Harrogate side of things, but people will say it's very difficult to get a panel at Harrogate, and it absolutely is very difficult to get a panel at Harrogate. But you may only be eligible, the wrong word, but appropriate for one panel topic. And there's 4 places on that panel, and perhaps 60, 70 people put forward for it. And so, that's the difficulty. It's kind of, it's really,
and you've
really
got
hard.
An obligation to the attendees and the readers, who is what the festival is for. Like, we talk about how important the festival is for us, but you're putting on a show for readers, not for authors. So it's making sure you are giving everything the best you can give for them as well, which is important to remember, I guess.
Absolutely. There's lots and lots of considerations. And lots of considerations, but yeah, absolutely, you want it to be as good for the audience as possible. Lots of other considerations as well that we take into account, and I'm sure that's the same with other festivals. Without going into tedious detail about it, it's very difficult, I suppose, if you're starting out to find a place on those kind of the big festivals. So Crime Fest, absolutely, book for Crime Fest.
I loved Crime Fest.
Crime Fest is great, it's really, really great.
So
I've been
relaxed,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different vibe from all the festivals have their own different vibe and all different feelings and everything like that. I've been going to Crime Fest. I didn't go for the first year when it was first over from Left Coast Crime, but I think the last, I don't know how many years, at least 10, possibly 15 maybe. I don't know. It's great. Crime Fest every year.
Great. Well, hopefully lots of our listeners will be in attendance as well then.
Excellent.
So just also, what about authors who find talking in public difficult? Should they work on their public speaking skills and confidence at events, or do you think it's possible to have a good career as an author without doing personal appearances?
I think it's perfectly possible to have a decent career as an author without doing personal appearances. If there was a magic formula for you should do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to become a bestseller because of this, then we would all follow that, wouldn't we? But it's not the way it works. So if you don't want to, then I don't think it necessarily will affect negatively upon you. And as I said, if you look at it brutally in terms of your career, if you go to a festival, you are not necessarily going to sell enough books to justify the attend, what you're paying out to attend. So you have to look at it from a different level. So, when I'm going to festivals, it's often not like, is this going to make me loads of money? Is this going to advance my career in this linear way? I'm going because it's fun and I want to meet people and I want to hang out, and you never know what will happen. You never know who you will meet and what will result from that. In terms of I am incredibly nervous, or started out incredibly nervous about public speaking. My first panel that I was ever on was a disaster. I hate, as I said, being the center of attention. For various reasons, I don't like people kind of looking at me almost. It's like me and leave me alone kind of thing. I don't want to be the center of attention. So it was very much stepping out of my comfort zone the first time I did a panel. But the only way to expand your comfort zone is by doing it. And now I don't care. I'll go on stage in front of 800 people, and what will be, and it's fine. And so I think there is something kind of valuable almost just from doing that for your own benefit. So if you are nervous about doing it, I think you maybe get something from doing it. But if you don't want to, then don't.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Good advice.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of authors are introverts, I think, aren't they, or kind of a weird mixture between introverts and extroverts. And like anything in life, if you absolutely hate it, then there's no point in doing it. And if you just want to kind of focus on your books and things, then that's absolutely fine. But I think if you at least kind of go to a festival, even when you're not on a panel, and can meet some of the other people there and feel a little bit less intimidated by the whole situation, then that probably gives you some confidence to think, okay, yeah, maybe I could do a little panel if I was asked, type of thing. So yeah,
absolutely. I absolutely that. Everybody's in the same boat when you go. Everybody's going, oh God, yeah, kind of thing. But once you go out on stage, my first panel was terrible. My microphone wasn't on. I was already incredibly nervous about the whole thing. And the moderator asked me the first question, and I spoke at length for about 4 minutes. And then somebody at the back put their hand up and said, "We can't hear you, your microphone's
on." No.
And so everybody, all the other people on the panel all checked, all our microphones were off. So everybody turned them all on. And I was like, oh God, this is awful. And then the moderator went, okay, and went to the next person. So my entire first answer, and it was like a nightmare scenario, but it was like also nobody died. And it's like you come out of it at the end and you think that actually it doesn't really matter. It's not that bad. What I was scared of sort of happened, I suppose, and it's not that bad. It's fine,
Yeah, total baptism of fire. I guess if the worst thing happens, as you say, you're like, well, I'm still here. No one died. So
exactly, it's never as scary as you think it is, and it gets less scary the more you do it, I think.
Yes, that's great advice. Thank you, Alex. And The Half-Burnt House is obviously out now in hardback, and it's next year in paperback.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know the exact date, but yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not sure. But and what's next for you? Can we expect another creepy thriller soon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always writing, and I'm towards the end of the next book now. I'm doing the structural edits at this point, so I've already got a first draft. We're just kind of working through it and changing it. But I'm very loath to talk about anything or
Oh
give
yes,
any
don't
details away.
spoil it. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, there is there's an Amazon listing for it which has a synopsis of it, which is it's sort of vaguely accurate, but maybe not quite, because I changed so much during my drafts that it will inevitably be somewhat different. But it's another kind of spooky psychological serial killer thriller. So.
Fantastic. And finally, we'd like to ask you if there's anything in particular that you're reading right now that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I go through different phases, and I've not been reading a lot of long form fiction at the moment. Not for a bit. At the moment, I'm reading. I get sent loads of proofs. I guess you guys do too. So I'm reading a book called The Grief House by Rebecca Thorn, which is brilliant so far.
I think I've read the blurb for that somewhere, and it sounded maybe I've seen it on Twitter or something.
I just saw it today, funny enough.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just on Twitter, I think.
Okay, well, I'm say again. Oh, X,
X,
yeah,
no, we
don't.
Twitter's dead, everybody.
Stand up against it.
I'm trying to be better.
No. But I mean, that's really good so far. I only just started it. I mean, but this will. Everybody recommends this who's read it. It's not out until next August.
Wow.
But the proofs have been out for a while. Blood Like Mine by Stuart Neville.
Yes,
have you read that?
I haven't been lucky enough to get a proof, but I have heard from about 5 different people now that it's just absolutely amazing. So
yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and I hope it kind of eats the world for him because he deserves it. But I really love that. And also Fiona Cummins' latest one, All of Us Are Broken. I really love that.
Yes, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love her characters, and I love her writing, and I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think she took it to a different. I mean, I like the last one too, but I think she took it to a different level with that.
So, what about you, Nikki? What are you reading at the moment?
I haven't been read anything this week actually since we last spoke.
What you mean when we spoke a few days ago? Special with Trevor.
I haven't. Unfortunately, I think I'm just trying to focus on my first draft, and I do have a pile of proofs that I need to get through, that are kind of beckoning. But I find when I'm writing the very beginnings of books, I find I can't read other people's stuff as well. I think you can end up adopting voices that I can anyway and things. So I just want to sort that bit out. And then once I'm kind of a third in to mine, then it'll be a fine again. But that initial bit, I don't tend to read too much. So yes. So how about you, Lauren? What are you reading?
Well, now you've thrown me because I maybe don't know what I said in our last episode, but I have listened to and really loved Home by Cailean Steed, which was brilliant. I think I did a panel for her. She had a panel for a debut group, and she was on it. And she was talking about it. So like about escaping from a cult and getting dragged back in. It was brilliant. I do love a good cult story, especially because it was set in this country as well. So many of them are set in America, aren't they? And it was set in Scotland and Ireland. And I just finished reading The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, which I'm a bit late to the party at, considering that I absolutely love Janice Hallett. So those are my 2 books at the moment. So they were really good.
Fabulous. Well, sadly, I think that's probably all we've got time for. So a huge thank you, Alex, for all those fantastic answers and coming on to chat to us today.
Oh God, no! Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's a pleasure.
Brilliant.
And obviously the Half Burnt House is out now, and it's probably the perfect creepy read for Halloween. So do check it out. And then we've got our next Agent minisode coming next week, I think. And if you have enjoyed listening to us, please don't forget to like or subscribe to be the first to catch the next episode.
Yes, and that just leaves me with the final task of saying goodbye from Alex. Goodbye, Alex.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye from Nikki.
Bye.
And goodbye from me. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.